My name is Jessica Costa. I live in Kensington, New Hampshire with my husband Jeff and our two awesome boys, Nicholas, who's 5.5, and Jake, who just turned 2 last month. I work at GE Aviation in Lynn, Massachusetts, and I'm a military manufacturing programs leader. Jake brings a whole different dynamic to our family. He is funny and feisty and willful.
So what does a lion do?
The day Jake was born, I was 24 weeks. I had been to the doctor earlier in the week for my regular 24-week appointment and everything checked out normal. But I woke up early that Friday morning and I wasn't feeling right. And it was definitely contractions, but I think at that point I was in denial. I had called the doctors and they said when they're timeable, or if you feel like you need to come in, come on in. Before he was even born, the doctor looked at me and said, you know that this might not be viable. And we did, we knew. I mean, 24 weeks, that's 6 months pregnant, that's nothing. I had barely started to feel him move.
I call it mass chaos because there had to be 10 to 15 nurses, 3 or 4 doctors, and then a baby that is, you know, he was 1 pound, 7 ounces and 12.5 inches, which you think it's small, but I mean, we have pictures of my ring up on his arm, like, I mean, it barely fits over my finger, and it would have gone up to his shoulder, except he had too many IVs in, you know, and I have a picture of my hand around his head, and like, his whole head, like my hand was covering. It was one of those things that you don't know if the next time you see your child that he's gonna be living.
The first thing out of the nurse practitioner's mouth was, your baby is very sick. And by sick, she meant his lungs are barely there. He can't function on his own. He wasn't sick with a disease, but just he needed to grow. He needed to get stronger.
He was alive, he was screaming. You know, 10 minutes in, they told us that he was a feisty little guy, and he wasn't, he was fighting for everything he had.
It was scary and daunting and exhausting, and you really don't know what to do. You can't hold him. You just kind of look at him, and we didn't know what the road ahead looked like. It was around the 40-day mark when he finally had his ventilator removed that I walked into the hospital, and he was just on a CPAP, and I was able to pick him up and hold him. And that's when it finally felt real. And then a few days later, when I realized I could cradle him in my arms and look at him, that was kind of another like, aha. You know, when I looked in his eyes and held him that way, that's when I finally felt 6 weeks later, I'm holding my baby like a baby. After 115 days in the hospital, after 2 surgeries, we were able to bring our baby home. And it was more emotional, I think, than the day he was born. Because now we're saying goodbye to these people that kept our baby alive. How do you thank them? How do you repay them?
I didn't think that I would have a 2-year-old son who runs around the house like crazy today. I didn't think that was gonna happen. Because when you're looking at this baby that is practically see-through, who you touch his skin and you feel like you're gonna rub it off, not just by putting his hand on yours, that you don't think that you're gonna be able to pull out of that. It's not in books that you read or parenting classes that you go into. They don't brace you about the things that can go wrong and, you know, the curveballs that you're thrown and what you have to go through to come out alive.
First time I met Jake, he was about an hour to an hour and a half old. I was the nurse practitioner on that day when the call came for a transport. Jake received multiple doses of surfactant, and March of Dimes is one of the organizations that helped bring surfactant into our field, and that has changed all the dynamics of how we take care of premature babies.
Without March of Dimes, Jake may not be here, you know, and that's the same for a lot of super premature babies out there. Surfactant is a very common thing that they need at that age. And without March of Dimes, who knows if it would be here.
This year will be our 3rd March for Babies as part of Team Jake's Journey. I think it's going to be important as both the boys get older to share with them what we're doing and why we're doing it. And he's such a good story that it's nice to be able to show him off at events.
I knock on wood, but he's doing fantastic so far. Not that we haven't had our ups and downs, but he's come out of this like a rocket, and outside of being small, he's perfect.